What up gamers, I'm Jayson and today on Dice & Dragons I'm going to be reviewing Annapurna, Leave No Trace Behind, designed by Rebecca Horovitz and published by Fiat Lucre. Now I'd just like to thank Rebecca for sending me this review copy of the game, as well as inviting me to participate in the Climb for Charity event. That was definitely a lot of fun. It was held during Gen Con Online. Now this is a game for ages 13 plus and for 2 to 4 players. Now, for those of you that are wondering where Julie is, we did get to play around a little bit with the cooperative version of the game. However, the meat of this game is in the competitive mode, which I played a lot of during the Climb for Charity event, which is why I'm doing this review solo. So what are you doing in Annapurna, Leave No Trace Behind? Well, you are one of 4 climbers climbing to the peak of the Annapurna mountaintop. Now, in the cooperative version of the game, you're going to work together to ensure that everyone reaches the peak safely. And to make it more challenging, you're going to try to get up there without leaving a trace behind and ensuring that you are in perfect balance. Now, in the competitive version of the game, you're going to be competing. That's right, competing with your fellow climbers to be the first to the top of the mountain. Once you reach the top of the mountain, you will be defending and trying to bring your mountain into balance. Well, at least have it more balanced than the other players in order to score the most flags. And the player that is the first to get to 9 flags will be crowned the victor and the best climber, obviously. So with that being said, I'm going to grab my drink. And then I'm going to get all set up and teach you how to play Annapurna, Leave No Trace Behind. Now we're going to take a look at the components for Annapurna, Leave No Trace Behind. We'll start with the rule books. So there is a competitive one and a cooperative one. You notice the difference in the time of the games because when you're playing co-op, you're doing a single ascent of the mountain. Now I'll take a look at the layout. So shows you the gear, what you get in the game, explains the mountain cards, the yin yang values, how to set up the game, the different actions that you're going to be taking for your climbing phase as you do your first ascent. So explore, trade, hide, and sweep. What you must do when you end your turn. How you can potentially scavenge cards from other players. Then you get the rules section for when you're at the peak, in particular drop and throw. You can also bury, which is very important to bring your mountain into balance. And then how the 2 rule books differ really is the end aspect here and scavenge. You won't be doing scavenging in the cooperative version, but it explains how you get your flags and get your points in order to win the game, as well as reset up the mountainside. Now we'll just take a look at the cooperative book, and you'll notice it's very much the same layout. So a lot of the actions are the same, except for end of ascent. So you can try it on easy, hard, leave no trace behind, then a few other variants to make the game that much more challenging. So those are the 2 rule books that come with the game. Next, we've got our 4 meeples. So the 4 colors of the players, blue, red, green, and brown. Now, each player has their own set of cards, which we'll look at in just a second. You also have the fly cards, which comes in the notations of 1, 2, and 3. Now, each of these cards has their yin and yang values. So you notice right now they're all sorted. Not sure they're quite all sorted by yin and yang. And then when you discover them on the mountain or play them out of your hand, they have some potential different effects. So Sweet Dreams, you'll skip your turn. See for Miles, this card is your P card. You can assign it a yin or yang value between 1 to 4. So very cool. Rope, you must explore the row above you on your next turn. So you get instructions from these cards as you're going up, as well as pay attention to the balance values. You'll need to balance out your whole mountain. Some can be good, like the chocolate bar, which will give you another turn. Now, we'll just take a quick peek at the other colors, because as you'll notice, the cards are all the same. So there is really no difference between each of the players, which is good because you definitely want to have a balanced game. So there you go. We took a quick look at green. When I was playing the game during the tournament, I believe I was green both times because I did compete in the tournament for charity. And there are the cards for brown. Sorry that they're not all put back in the perfect order. But as you can see, 4 sets of identical cards. And there you have it. We have gone over the components for Annapurna, Leave No Trace Behind. Now keep it right here as we're going to teach you how to set up the game and then how to play. Now let's take a look at how you'd set up Annapurna, Leave No Trace Behind. Now, the first thing that you need to do is set up the mountains. Now, in a 4-player game, we'd have 2 other mountains like this. So obviously, this is a 2-player setup. You will shuffle the cards. You start with a row of 5 cards, then 4, then 3, then 2, then 1. Ideally, you'd leave a space above your peak for your cash. Those are cards that you're going to be sweeping from your mountain or scavenging from other players. And you have to do the same for your opponent as well. So everyone's going to have the same setup for their mountain. You can have the flags in the middle or just someplace where they're accessible. You will end up, after you've set up your mountain, with 3 cards that make up your hand. And that's it. The setup for the game is very straightforward. So now we're ready to teach you how to play Annapurna. Leave no trace behind. Keep it right here. We'll be right back. Now we're going to teach you how to play Annapurna. Leave no trace behind. Now, to do that, there's a few different actions that you can take on your turn, but the starting action really starts with the same thing. You're going to want to explore. You need to see what you're going to be doing on the mountain, and of course, you want to start your ascent. Now, to make an explore action, you would just place your meeple on the card. You then flip over the card and reveal it, and in this case, I have spotted a yeti. Nothing happens, and I will keep my meeple standing up. Now, if I've been delayed or there is an effect, I will lay my meeple down to signify that I cannot play for my next turn. Now, at the end of my turn, if any cards are balanced, I may sweep. And that doesn't typically happen on your first turn unless you encounter a card with no yin-yang value and you don't have any negative effects, which, if I'm not mistaken, do not exist in the game. But these cards can be swept easily right after their effects have finished running their course. So we'll also do the same thing for the blue player. Reveal and don't poke the yeti. So for example, if these were both on the same mountain, well, we'd have some balance. Now the next action that we can take is trade. But before we do trade, I want to continue exploring just so that you get a feel as to what you're going to be doing in the game. And stand the meeple up. Last time I played this was actually on a tabletop simulator, so keep forgetting about the standing and laying down aspect of the game. So we're going to continue up. Now you can only move to adjacent cards, so I wouldn't be able to go from here to here. Let's continue my ascent. We're going to go here, and actually that worked out very well. We get don't poke the yeti. It is the end of my turn, so I may now sweep these cards. My climber will remain where I was, and these would then go into my cache, and your cache will be normally face down. Well, I'm going to keep them face up as I'm playing solo here to teach you the game, but normally the cache would be face down. So we'll continue the exploration as well. We're going to move to the outside, see what we get here. So last on the trail, if this is the first card you flip face up in a row, skip your next turn. All right, so I have to skip the blue player's next turn. So we lay down the meeple to signify that he has been affected. And unfortunately, there's nothing that I can't sweep it right now. So that gives another player the opportunity to scavenge if I happen to forget to do that, which the blue player would have had if I hadn't properly swept the brown player's cards. Now, it's the brown player's turn, and he's got some bad luck, and there's stuff that we can definitely do to delay him. So we have the opportunity to do things like trade or hide. So we'll take a look at what a trade action would be. We've got the perfect card here, actually, for brown. So you get the card C for miles. This is your peak card. You may assign it between a 1 to 4 yin or yang value. So that's what we're actually going to do. We're going to trade the card. So when we do that, we switch the card from the back with the 1 in our hand, and then we can explore that card in the future. But the card from the mountainside does not go back to our hand. This one, well, we don't get actually take a look at it. I'm showing you guys right now is the binoculars, but it would go into the cache, which would be face down. But like I said, playing with that face up just so I make sure to not get anything confused. Now, it would be the blue player's turn. So he stands his meeple back up. Now let's say, for example, he now ends his turn, forgot to sweep his card into his cache. The brown player could call scavenge, take the card, and put it actually in their cache. So you've now stolen a card from another player. And as he's got limited options as where he can go, we're now going to take a look at what you can do with hide. So when we do hide, you switch a card face down on another climber's mountain, and the card from their mountain would go into our cache. So the card I would want to put is this one. It's not a good card, limited options. So if they're going up the mountain, we take that, and this card goes face down, don't forget, in the cache, but we're going to put it face up just for the sake of teaching you how to play. So now it is blue's turn, so they can either continue their ascent, but the option of going sideways also exists. So we've got rope. It means you must explore the row above you, as this is affecting your meeple. Once again, lie it down to remind yourself that there is an effect in play. So we'll do another 2 rounds, and then we're going to cover what happens when you get up to the peak. So brown wants to continue their ascent. They're going to explore. So best left behind. You may flip another card on your mountainside face down. So that can be good for getting to balance, but doesn't help us at this point in time. Now blue must ascend. So they'll move here to explore. Sweet dreams. Skip your next turn, but they're able to sweep the card into their cache. And that's how things are going to continue until we get to the top of the mountain. So what I'm actually going to do is we're going to take a quick cut, because we'll show you what happens when one player gets to the peak of the mountain and how that's going to affect the blue player who's still trying to get up to the top. So we'll be back with part 2 of this how to play in just a moment. Now let's take a look at what will happen when you peak in Annapurna. Now, a few different things have happened. I've just advanced the game, and we'll say it's the brown player's turn, and he arrives at the peak. Reveal the card, and if you remember from the earlier how to play, I put C for miles up there. So if this card is your peak card, you may assign it between 1 to 4 yin or yang value, which at this point, I've got 3 yang. I could sweep, leaving no trace behind, and scoring 4 flags for the victory. So that is your goal. You really want to try to leave no trace behind if possible. Don't forget the player that gets to 9 flags first will be the winner. But we're not going to say that this was the case in terms of what we're trying to do here. So we'll just imagine that we had something else that was completely useless at the top. So let's say we had the Don't Poke the Yeti card. So I would arrive at the peak, be the first one there. I would then remove my meeple from the board. I would then add the cache to my hand. So this would then be the end of my turn, and I would be able to do something else on my next turn now that I peaked. So let's take a look at what the blue player would have to do. He had a rock slide, got delayed, can't move up, it's in a bad place. He can't move back in the game. So we just could either stay there or move to another space. At this point, it's probably better to do something else. So you see that there's a lot of yang out there. Not any real great negative actions, but I could try to hide or bury something on the other player's mountain. So that's exactly what I'll do. I'll hide a card on their mountain. Blue doesn't have very many great options. So now it is brown's turn. So they can do a few different things. Well, you can take a look at what you have in your backpack. You can decide to drop a card in an empty space. And then after you've dropped the card, you can bury cards that are in balance. So keep that in mind. Players can still scavenge your cards that are not in balance. So that is one option. Now, let's say you're trying to mess with another player. Well, you could throw a card onto their board that could bring them out of balance, and then that player can retaliate to throw something that would potentially bring you out of balance. At this point in time, the blue player does not have anything great, because as you can see, this would help you balance your mountain. so they would not necessarily want to retaliate. So we took a look at the drop, we took a look at the berry. Really, once you're at the mountain, you're trying to protect yourself and balance your mountain as soon as possible to ensure that you gain the most points. So that's really what you're going to be doing out there. And then once everything is balanced, well, you're going to score your points. And just for a quick reminder, so at the end of the ascent, you will reward the flags. So if you're the first climber at the peak and you've got a yin-yang totaling 0, you get the bonus for no trees behind. So then when you're awarding flags with 3 climbers, you give 3 flags to the closest, 2 to the second, and none to the furthest. And then for 2 climbers, you give 3 flags to the closest and then 2 flags to the furthest. So just remember that once you get up there, that is what happens. So you're really trying to bring yourself closest into balance and fill up your mountain while blue is still going up the mountainside. And there you have it. That's what you're going to be doing in Annapurna. So you're going to be moving up the mountain, defending your peak, trying to delay your opponents, and making sure you've got the best yin and yang balance. Now keep it right here, as I'm going to be coming back at you with my review of the game. So what did I think of Annapurna, Leave No Trace Behind? Well, the one thing I gotta say is I do love the fact that there is a cooperative version of the game, and the fact that the mechanics remain largely identical as to the competitive version, it makes it a great way to teach the game. Now, one of the downsides of the cooperative version being so similar to the competitive version is that there's not a lot of meat to it. Once you climb to the top of the mountain and help the other climbers up, you're not going to face that much of a challenge. The real challenge will be once you move on to higher difficulties of the co-op version of the game, when you must make sure that everyone gets to the top of the mountain while leaving no trace behind, which is definitely a lot more challenging than just getting to the top. Now, that may not be for everyone, but it does add a fair bit of replayability to the game and also gives you a lot of practice with regards to playing it against other players as to how you want to move up your mountain, potentially use the abilities of, trading your cards to ensure that once you get to the top, you're in the position to be the victor. Now, for those of you that did happen to see any of the highlights, there will be a link down below to the highlights video that Rebecca has posted on the Annapurna board game channel. I was not doing well at all during my first game. I was definitely coming in last place. However, I was able to climb to the top of the mountain and leave no trace behind twice, which makes a big difference. So having that cooperative version of the game where you can focus on that will really develop your skills as a player for this game. That being said, the games are going to be a lot faster than playing competitively, and I do think that it's not really the heart of the game. The real meat of the game definitely comes in the competitive mode, which I got to play a lot of during the climb for charity. Now, what you're going to be doing in the competitive mode is getting to the top, but then it really comes into how you're going to defend as well as bring your mountain into balance. You can try to do it on your way up, and there is definitely a high luck quotient when it comes to that, because you do not know what cards you have placed on the mountain. So a bad start can really delay you. But if you do get a bad start and you do know your cards very well and have some experience with the game, you can use that to your advantage to ensure that once you get to the top and leave no trace behind, or maybe you will then take a look at your hand and be like, you know what? I didn't get a good start. I've got the potential to sabotage some other players by hiding some nasty cards on their mountain. That's really where you're going to see the skill element come into the game. And what's really interesting about Annapurna as a game is that you're going to get whatever your group brings to it when you get it to the table. The game time does say that it can play in 30 minutes plus. The cooperative mode is 15 to 20 minutes. I'd say that if you're trying to do leave no trace behind for cooperative, it may go a little longer than that 20 minutes, but you can get some very long games of Annapurna in when you're playing the competitive version. Now, if players just let their competitors, looking for the word, go up the mountain without hindering them at all, you could definitely have a game where it plays in about an hour, hour and a half. Competitive versions I played all ran about an hour and a half to play, well, close to 2 hours, some of them, to play the full round and have someone get to 9 flags. So the games can be even longer than that, though, if everyone is at each other's throats. If you like take that games and take that strategies, there is a lot of opportunity to do that in Annapurna, and you can end up with some very long and challenging games where you're working very hard against the other players to become the victor. Now, what I do also love about the game is the simplicity of the design. It's clean, it's neat, it's elegant, and as you can see from the video showing off the components, the game is actually ready to go. In terms of what's going to be needed to get this Kickstarter into your hands, there's not going to be that much, and that is definitely, in terms of a crowdfunded project, something that I consider to be very much in the game's favor, especially with just some bad experience I've had with games that were marketed being closer to a finished project, and I've now seen some very significant delays, some going on a few years. But for those players that love take that competitive games with a lot of elegance and simplicity to the design, but a lot of complexity that can come out once you learn the cards, learn how to place the cards, how to slow down your opponents, as well as speed up your own ascent to the top of the mountain, it can definitely be a very fun and challenging experience. My experience with the game is I haven't definitely gotten to that deeper level. I've been playing some games where you made the mistake of, just taking it easy on each other and one player wins. My experience is in the tournament when I was able to leave no trace behind. I was one of the only players at that time that was, trading. People were focused on their own mountain where I was focused, and they didn't notice what I was doing, and I was able to get some nice success like that. However, a lot of that is still that luck and randomization factor. If you get a poor card at the start, for example, maybe skipping your turn or losing the ability to go up the mountain, you can definitely find yourself stalled and in a bad position. But what I do like about the game is that if you do have a bad round, you can really focus on being that climber to get to the top with their mountain in perfect balance and get yourself back in the game. And that is not an easy thing to do because the players do have a lot of opportunities to interfere with you in terms of getting that perfect ascent. So keep that in mind. I think this game is going to play differently for a lot of groups, and it is very accessible in terms of the mechanics and what you're going to be doing. So I do enjoy this game, and I think I've talked enough about it. I'm going to give my rating for the game. This is definitely not my favorite game. It's not going to hit the table every week, but it's a solid, clean, elegant design. I give this a 7. It's something that most gamers are going to enjoy, especially if you're gamers that like cooperative games, but also like being able to take those skills and bring them into some fierce competitive take that elements. You got to fight with your wife. You'd rather not be on each other's side. Well, guess what? That works for Julie and I. We can go at each other in the game. It's a nice, safe space. We're not actually going to kill each other. So, with that being said, it's time for me to remind you to like, comment, subscribe, click the notification bell so that YouTube will let you know when our next video is released. And then down below in the video description, you will find links to all of our social media feeds, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. As Julie and I only got a little bit of experience playing around with the cooperative game, we didn't really get a full game played. I will not have any pictures up there, but don't forget, down in that video description, you can find some links to the highlight video from the tournament. You'll see some great stuff there and get to experience all the tournament in a compressed fashion. And then popping up in front of me are going to be some links to our previously released videos. The one over here will be to our most recently released content. I'm trying to think of a good game that is competitive and cooperative. Not quite sure what it's going to be yet, but I'll find something that's got both elements, and that'll be the link that you see over here. Now I'm going to grab my drink. Unfortunately, I can't grab my best friend, so I'll grab the box. And I'll remind you to keep playing games.